Hello, my friend. Today I will tell you another long-forgotten legend. Close your eyes and let the magic transport you to Middle-earth. Our journey begins. In the time before the time that is known, when the sky still held the song of the aurora, and the bones of the world were yet warm from their shaping, the north of Middle-earth slept beneath a shroud of snow in silence. There, far beyond the green hills of the Shire and the wide rivers of the south, beyond the great teeth of the misty mountains, lay a land forgotten by all but the wind and the stars. It was a land of deep ice and deeper memory, Forodwaith, where the sun seldom danced and the moon whispered to the white wastes. There, in the ages before the Third, before the fall of Númenor, before even the crowning of Gondolin, dragons were born. Not all at once, and not all alike. They came like frost in the still of the night, slow, patient, vast. Some were coiled serpents that slithered through the roots of the world. Others bore wings like thunderclouds and eyes like burning coals. They were Morgoth's fireborn, the last children of a mind twisted by spite and ruin, and yet beautiful in their own way. Terrible, yes, but terrible as a storm or the edge of time. And among them, unhatched in the cold belly of a mountain cave, and cradled in silence, was one who would come to be known as Smaug. But he was not yet Smaug. He was a thought, a thrum, a coiled breath waiting to become flame. His egg, smooth and dark as obsidian glass, lay nestled beneath layers of stone and gold-flecked ash. Around him were the bones of dragons long dead, their scales still faintly aglow, their teeth like daggers thrust into the rock. The warmth that held him came not from fire, but from memory. The dying embers of ancient wrath carried through blood and bone, pulsing like a distant drumbeat. Outside, the world was changing. Elves walked under starlight, singing songs they would one day forget. Dwarves carved halls in the mountains, dreaming of gold and hidden flame. And men, restless, mortal men, began to shape the stories that would become legend. But the dragons, they waited. The eldest of them, cold-hearted and vast, dwelled far in the north where ice met fire. They spoke rarely, and when they did, it was in dreams and riddles. Smaug's dreams were full of these voices, deep and endless, like echoing chambers in the earth. He did not yet know speech, nor did he understand the tales that stirred in his sleep. But they came to him all the same, visions of black wings blotting out the sun, of dwarven kings weeping over shattered thrones, of fire raining like stars upon the world. And always at the center of these dreams was the same hunger. Not the hunger for meat or for battle, but for gold, for treasure so vast it would drown the mind, for crowns piled like pebbles, for chalices forged by elven hands and stained with time. The dragons did not merely crave wealth. They were drawn to it as stars to the night. It was not greed as men know it. It was something deeper, woven into the marrow of their being, as if the gold itself whispered to them in a language older than light. He saw nothing, not because he was blind. He saw nothing, not because he was blind, but because the world had not yet kindled itself into meaning. His first sight was of ash and bone. His first scent, the memory of fire. And his first thought was of longing. He was alone. The others were gone. The lair was abandoned. Only the whisper of the wind through the stones remained, and the slow drip of melting ice in distant tunnels. Smaug stretched his wings, new, fragile, leathery, and tested the walls of his cave. His talons scraped against treasure forgotten, coins that had not known the light of day in an age. He tasted them with his tongue, letting their dull, silent song pass over him. Gold. Ancient gold. He curled around it instinctively, his small body warming with its presence, as if the treasure knew him. And perhaps it did, for dragons and gold were bound together by something no lore master had ever truly named. Days passed, then years. The young worm grew, and with each molt of scale, with each shed skin, he learned to listen, not with ears, but with instinct. He felt the movements of the world through the rock. He heard the forges of dwarves in the south, like heartbeats in the mountains. He caught the fading notes of elven song carried on the winds of the east, and slowly the world began to shape itself around him, a tapestry of meaning woven with flame. He watched from afar as other dragons met their ends. Scaffa, a worm pierced by the spear of a northern king. Glaurung, the father of dragons, undone by mortal will. Even mighty Ancalagon, black as night and vast beyond measure, fell from the sky in fire and ruin. One by one, the drakes of the north were hunted, slain, or broken. Smaug did not mourn. He did not rage. He remembered. He listened. And deep in his hoarded heart, he waited not for kin nor for vengeance, but for a mountain and a name. Erebor, the lonely mountain. It came to him in fragments, rumors sifted through stone and ash, tales of a dwarven kingdom rich beyond reckoning, a hall of hammers and hearths, a river of gold beneath stone. Smaug tasted the name like a forgotten song, its syllables clinking like coins. He saw it in his mind's eye, before ever seeing it with his own, the gleam of Arkenstone fire, the thunder of forges beneath the mountain's heart. And in that moment, though no word passed his lips, he was changed. The nameless worm had found his purpose. Smaug was born. The northern winds, sharp and unrelenting, howled through the jagged teeth of the withered heath, singing in a tongue older than any spoken by elves or men, a music wrought not of melody, but of memory, of bone and frost and ages forgotten. There, where the cold bit deepest and the earth seemed to slumber beneath layers of stone and snow, Smaug stirred. The young dragon, no longer the hatchling swaddled in darkness and solitude, had grown in breadth and thought. His scales had deepened in hue, from the dull bronze of his youth to a gleaming gold-tinged crimson, like flame seen through the eyes of a dream. Each movement of his body sent a soft ripple through the mounds of treasure he now claimed. Relics of fallen halls and shattered hopes, tokens of dwarf kings long turned to dust. Their stories drowned beneath his breath and beneath the weight of time. His lair, hidden beneath the northern cliffs and shrouded in mist, was not one of grandeur in the fashion of Erebor, nor yet carved by artisans with reverent hands. No, it was a place formed by the land itself, a cathedral of ice and basalt, where the silence hummed with ancient patience. Stalactites hung from the cavern's crown like the teeth of a forgotten god, and the floor shimmered with a glaze of frost so pure it reflected Smaug's fiery eyes with a clarity that unsettled even him. And yet it was not the cold that troubled him, for dragons are no strangers to the absence of warmth. It was the emptiness, the absolute echoing emptiness that answered him when he thought aloud. One night, when the stars shimmered faintly above a world blanketed in snow, and the wind sighed like a dying breath through the passes, Smaug opened his jaws, not to roar, but to speak. Not to others, for there were none, but to the silence itself. "Why do I yet linger in this land of fading frost and whispering wind?" he asked, his voice deep and layered with reverberations that made the very ice shiver. "Am I to remain here as some guardian of a tomb, coiled around the bones of forgotten glories, while the world shifts and grows beyond my knowing?" Continued, and as he spoke, the shadows continued, and as he spoke, the shadows seemed to gather closer, not menacingly, but attentively, as though even the darkness hungered for his words. "I have seen in dream the halls of Erebor," he murmured, eyes unfocused, as if peering through the layers of stone in distance. "I have felt the echo of their forges, each hammer blow a heartbeat, each crafted gem a cry of pride. And the gold sings not in melody, no, but in longing. It calls to me not as prey to predator, but as flame to air. Am I drawn to it for conquest, or because I seek something of myself within its luster?" He paused, his gaze drifting toward the cave mouth, where the snowfall whispered down like ash. "Or perhaps," he added more softly now, "it is not the gold I seek, but the story it tells, of order, of craft, of will, shaped into permanence, and in that permanence, a defiance of decay." The wind carried no reply. But Smaug's words did not vanish. They lingered in the air like smoke that refused to disperse, curling and thickening into something more than sound. And so it was that in the seasons that followed, he began to move, not with haste nor with reckless hunger, but with the deliberate, watchful patience of one who senses destiny not as a sudden gale, but as a slow rising tide. His wings, once unused, now spread to catch the high mountain winds. He flew not straight to Erebor, but across the scars of the north, as though retracing the wounds of his kind. Through the ruined passes of Angmar he passed, where the shadows of ancient wars clung to the stones, and whispered the names of kings who fell in madness. The land there felt wrong even to him, unnatural, as if the world itself had recoiled from what had been done. There were no songs in Angmar, only echoes, and Smaug, though proud, did not linger. He paused once over the skeletal remains of a dragon greater than he, perhaps one of the winged cold drakes of the elder days, whose name even the mountains had forgotten. Its bones were half buried in scree and snow, yet they spoke of a creature vast beyond reckoning. Smaug circled once, then alighted nearby, his claws crunching against the stone as he regarded the remains in silence. There was no threat here, no treasure, no tale etched in gold. Only the brittle, sun-bleached arc of a jawbone large enough to swallow a cart, and the memory of something once terrible and proud. "Were you wise, old one?" Smaug said aloud, his voice gentler now, touched with something like reverence. "Did you seek solitude, or did solitude find you? And did your death come as battle, or did it come slowly, like frost seeping into fire?" He traced the bone with a single claw, not breaking it, only brushing against it. And in that moment a strange stillness overcame him. Not fear. Dragons do not know fear in the way men or elves do, but something heavier, quieter, an echo of the loneliness he rarely let rise to the surface. For who was there to speak to but dust? Who remained, who might understand the weight of eternity that pressed upon him like snow upon a buried city? He stayed there until dusk fell and the sky burned red, then took to wing again. He did not look back. As he approached the southern slopes of the gray mountains, the air warmed and the scent of pine began to replace the sting of snow. Below him, the land softened, not with kindness, but with the promise of life. Valleys carved by rivers, hills dappled with trees whose leaves whispered stories in the wind. This was no longer the death land of his birth. This was a world alive, weary perhaps, but unbroken. And in the far-off haze, rising like a titan from the valley floor, he saw it. Erebor, the lonely mountain. Its crown shone with a faint sheen of snow in the golden light of morning. And even from this distance, Smaug felt the hum of its heart. Not the beating of forges, not yet, but the silent, steady breath of a kingdom sleeping beneath stone. A kingdom whose dreams were forged in treasure. Smaug hovered in the high air, the wind hissing across his wings, and he did not roar. He simply watched, his eyes bright with knowing. He had arrived. But arrival is not conquest, and conquest, he knew, was not merely the seizing of land or gold, but the mastery of a place's memory, of its will, and of the fears whispered in its deepest chambers. And so he waited, wings folded like cloaks around his terrible form, hidden in the clouds and the silence. The mountain had not yet seen him, but it would. The skies above Erebor were rarely silent, though those who dwelled beneath its crown seldom looked up. Wind coiled through the peaks like a serpent of thought, curling around jagged crags and slipping through narrow ravines with a voice that hummed of distant things. It was a wild song woven from the bones of the mountain and the breath of the heavens. And it was into this elemental music that Smaug descended, gliding not with fury but with the careful reverence of a shadow, seeking its place upon ancient stone. To the dwarves within the lonely mountain, the day had begun as any other. Steel clashing on steel, voices rising in song and argument alike, the ringing of hammers echoing through the vaulted chambers like the heartbeat of a slumbering god. Fires roared in the great forges, casting their coppery glow on walls rich with carvings and lore. Gold flowed like water, not molten, but in art, chased in delicate inlays, twisted into the arms of statues, piled in secret vaults that only the deepest bloodlines could name. King Thror stood upon a high balcony carved into the western wall of the inner keep. His beard braided with fire opals, his cloak heavy with the weight of lineage. His eyes, dark and set deep beneath brows shaped like mountain ledges, gazed not at the splendor of his halls, but beyond the gates, beyond the green valley below, beyond even the river that sang to the rocks as it wound through dale. His gaze was fixed upon the sky, and though his voice was low, it was steady as stone. "There is a heaviness in the light today," he murmured, not turning as his grandson approached. "Do you feel it, Thrain? As though the sun, though shining, does so with reluctance, as though its gaze upon us is dimmed not by clouds, but by some unseen veil." Thrain, still young by dwarven reckoning and full of fire, frowned slightly, but said nothing at first. He too looked out across the valley, his arms crossed over his chest. The wind tugged at the hem of his tunic, and for a moment he said nothing. But then he spoke slowly, as though weighing his words like precious stones. "I feel something, but I know not what. The birds have flown lower these past days. The goats near the lower slopes grow restless when the shadows pass. Perhaps a storm brews in the north." Thror nodded, though his eyes did not move. "Yes, a storm, but not of wind and rain. I think this is older, deeper, as though the roots of the mountain shiver, though its face remains unmoved." Thrain turned to him then, concern tracing his features. "Do you fear a coming war? Orcs from Gundabad. The old tribes have stirred again in whispers." But Thror shook his head slowly. "No, it is not the tread of boots I fear, nor the clash of axe and blade. It is silence, a silence with wings." His words hung in the air like smoke, curling into the cold wind and dissipating among the clouds. Below them the forges blazed on, heedless. But in the higher air, in the cloud-veiled heights above Erebor, Smaug circled. He did not dive, he did not roar. He listened, and what he heard was not the clamor of wealth or the chanting of the smiths. It was the pulse of desire, ancient and bright, bright as the first fire that ever licked the edge of the void. He felt it, the yearning etched into every vein of mithril, into every gem set into statue eyes, into the gold hammered not merely for trade or beauty, but for meaning. The dwarves, for all their pride, were not makers of hollow things. Their works carried memory, carried will, and the treasure they laid down was more than currency. It was legacy, a prayer to permanence in a world shaped by decay. Smaug was not blind to this. He did not scorn it. No, he envied it. As he watched from the high sky, his thoughts stirred with the kind of ache he had no name for. Not hunger, for that he could sate. Not wrath, for that he could summon. No, it was something lonelier, something more terrible. He envied the dwarves their purpose, to carve, to build, to remember through stone. What poetry it was! What tragedy! For all their might, their craft, their fire-fed passion, they had forgotten one truth, that permanence is an illusion, and gold, for all its gleam, cannot defy flame. Still, he did not strike. Not yet. Instead, he alighted in the bowl of a dead volcano to the north, its slopes warm still with some forgotten fire. There, alone, amid the crumbled black rock and the dust of eruptions long past, he spoke, this time to himself. They dream, these stone-dwellers, of empires set in iron and rune. They sing songs to their sons of battles won and hoards amassed. But they do not sing of silence. They do not dream of what comes when the last forge is dark and the gold lies untouched, not from reverence, but from the absence of hands. They do not think of stillness. He coiled slowly, his body casting long shadows in the light of the dying sun, and for a moment his thoughts turned not to conquest, but to time. Time, that great devourer, that slow and patient thief which even dragons must acknowledge. "Will they remember?" he whispered. "When I am gone, will any voice speak my name save in fear? And if fear fades, will I fade with it?" He closed his eyes then, not in weariness, but in something nearer to mourning. Yet even as he rested there, the mountain pulsed in his mind like a beacon. Erebor. The name itself carried the weight of prophecy. The mountain called not just to his greed, but to his grief. For somewhere beneath all the rage and grandeur, Smaug felt the emptiness that the gold might fill. Not just a hoard, but a home, a monument, a mirror. The wind shifted, the clouds thickened, and the silence, as Thror had sensed, spread its wings wide. The day that Smaug chose to descend was not marked by omen, nor heralded by lightning or storm cloud. There were no ravens that screamed in alarm, no sudden gusts to tear at banners or extinguish torches. Rather, the world held its breath in a quiet, almost tender stillness, as though it, too, was caught in some terrible reverie. The sun hovered behind a veil of gauzy cloud, its light filtered into something pale and pearlescent, casting upon the slopes of Erebor a glow that neither warmed nor warned. The river Selduin flowed smooth and dark, like a ribbon of obsidian stretched across the valley floor, and the wind whispered only to itself as it stirred the golden grasses near day. Smaug did not fly as other beasts fly. There was no frenzy in his wings, no reckless thrusting against the sky. Instead, he drifted downward with a measured grace, as though gravity itself had ceased to weigh upon him, and the air parted around him like the hush of a cathedral welcoming its god. His form, vast and glimmering with a deep burnished light, blotted the sky in silence. And the first to see him, a shepherd tending goats on the far edge of the river valley, did not cry out, but simply stared, mouth agape, as one might gaze upon a myth made flesh. And perhaps that is what he was, not merely a creature, but a judgment, a reckoning cast in gold and fire, sent to remind the world that power, when left too long to sleep, does not die. It dreams. Inside Erebor, deep within its endless labyrinth of stone and steel, King Thror sat in the Hall of Echoes, where the voices of the dead could still be felt among the pillars, and where dwarves came not to celebrate, but to remember. There the air was heavy with the scent of burning oil and iron, and the walls bore murals not of triumphs, but of sorrows, battles lost, kinships sundered, mountains abandoned. It was a place of gravity, of silence, of reverence. Thrain entered with haste, though not with the breathless panic of a frightened child. No, he moved as one burdened by knowledge too heavy to keep to himself, but too sacred to cast down in haste. "Father," he said, his voice low, yet firm, with the tremor of certainty. "Something comes, something vast, and winged, and terrible." Thror did not look at him at first. He simply ran his fingers along the carved arm of his throne, the stone worn smooth by generations of hands. "I know," he said at length. "I have heard it in the bones of the earth. The stones have spoken, though they use no tongues. And the air, do you not feel it? It is too still, too obedient, as if it waits to be broken." Thrain hesitated, then stepped forward, his expression raw with the conflict between fear and duty. "We must act. Send word to Dale. Seal the gates. Ready the forges to become furnaces of war. Whatever it is, be it beast or shadow or both, we must not be taken unawares." Now Thror turned to him, and the sorrow in his eyes was like the weight of a mountain. "And what, my son, is awareness to a people who have forgotten the nature of their pride? We build and build, stacking stone upon stone, hoard upon hoard, until we no longer remember why we sought these riches to begin with. The gold sings too loudly now. It drowns out the memory of purpose. It blinds us to the shape of doom, even as it casts its shadow upon our threshold." Thrain's voice faltered. "Do you speak of prophecy?" "I speak of balance," Thror replied, rising slowly, his cloak trailing behind him like the shadow of time itself. "For every mountain that rises too high, there is a valley waiting to drink its stones. For every flame that burns too bright, there is a wind that seeks to smother it. The dragon comes not merely for our gold. He comes to remind us of what we have forgotten, that nothing in this world is ours to keep." Even as the king spoke, the mountain shuddered. Not violently, not with quake or collapse, but with something older, something deeper, as though the very heart of Erebor sighed. Smaug had arrived. He hovered now above the great gate, the towers of the dwarves no more than matchsticks beside his coiled might. The walls, mighty as they were, seemed suddenly brittle beneath the gaze of his fire-golden eyes. His breath came slow and steady, each exhale sending heat waves trembling through the air, bending the outlines of the battlements. He did not speak, not yet. For a creature like Smaug, words were not given freely. They were currency, as precious and dangerous as gold, and must be spent only with purpose. The dwarves did not flee at once. To their credit, many stood. Archers manned the walls, horns blew from the watchtowers, notes of alarm, yes, but also of defiance. There were still those within Erebor who remembered the old songs, who had carved their ancestors' names into stone with bloodied hands. Pride ran deep in their bones, and when Thror gave the command to bar the gates and summon the battle-forged, they did not question. But deep in the halls where the Arkenstone rested, set upon its pedestal like the very soul of the mountain, there was a tremble, not of fear, but of anticipation. Smaug felt it even from outside. He felt the pull of it like gravity inverted. The stone called to him, not because it was the greatest jewel of the dwarves, but because it was a crystallization of purpose, of pride, of ambition, shaped into beauty. It was not just treasure, it was identity. And Smaug, in all his solitary wandering, had come to covet not merely gold, but the meaning within gold. "I do not burn merely to destroy," he whispered, his voice thick with the music of ancient fire. "I burn to make the world remember. I burn to brand into stone what time dares to erase." Then, with a roar that broke the sky like glass, he descended. The valley erupted into flame, and so began the fall of Erebor, not with the crumbling of walls, but with the unraveling of pride and the awakening of a fire that would not be forgotten. It was said by the men of Dale in the years that followed that the mountain wept that day, not in the fashion of rain upon its crags or meltwater upon its ledges, but with a grief that echoed through the stone itself, as if the veins of the rock had remembered a sorrow far older than the dwarves who dwelt within. The very foundations trembled, not from the crush of wing or the thunder of fire, but from something deeper, the breaking of purpose, the collapse of sanctity, the sundering of silence that had stood since the mountain's birth. Smaug's descent was not a frenzy. It was a ceremony. Each beat of his wings stirred gales that swept the towers of Erebor bare, tearing banners to ribbons, extinguishing forges that had not gone cold in centuries. The fire did not come all at once, but in waves, like the tide of some infernal sea, each gust of his breath illuminating the twilight with hues not merely of orange or red, but of something more ancient, more primordial, as though the fire remembered the first day the sun rose and envied its warmth. He struck not only with tooth and claw, but with an awareness that bordered on artistry. The gates fell, not in a single blow, but in a slow, grinding collapse, as molten iron flowed like blood down the stairways, and the stone crumbled beneath its own pride. And as the fire surged inward, curling through passageways carved in reverence and polished by generations of hands, the mountain began to cry. Not in sound, but in the fading of its light, in the cracking of its statues, in the way its air thickened not only with smoke, but with memory turned to ash. Within the depths, Thrain and Thror stood at the edge of the treasury, the Arkenstone behind them, gleaming with a brilliance undimmed by the growing darkness. And it was there, surrounded by treasures wrought with love and anguish and dreams passed down like heirlooms, that father and son spoke, not as kings and heirs, but as dwarves who felt the mountain's soul breaking beneath their feet. "It is not merely a beast," Thrain said at last, his voice thick from smoke. "He is a force, a flame with eyes, a hunger shaped into wings. And we, what are we to such a thing? Builders? Guardians? Or fools who believe the earth would not demand its due?" Thror turned to him slowly, and in his eyes was no anger, only the stillness of understanding that comes when pride has fallen away like bark from a dead tree. "All things that rise too high," he said quietly, "must give way to weight. We carved our names into these stones, thinking they would last forever. But stone forgets, Thrain. Even it forgets in time. And now fire comes to write its own name in the dust." There was silence then, broken only by the rumble of distant collapse and the shimmering note of the Arkenstone, which seemed to hum like a single, mournful bell. And in that silence, a thought passed between them, unspoken but understood, that what was being lost was not merely gold, nor kingdom, nor crown, but the dream of permanence. Outside, Smaug coiled through the corridors, his tail sweeping through vaults and galleries, his wings brushing the carved ceilings where murals of Durin's line now melted into formless shadow. He did not roar with triumph. He did not laugh with cruelty. Instead, he moved with a slowness born of awe, his great head weaving through piles of treasure, as if he feared to disturb the stories that slept beneath each coin. "So much," he murmured, more to himself than to any listener, for no dwarf now stood to answer him. "So much longing forged into shape. So many hopes gilded and polished and placed like prayers beneath the weight of stone. Did they think it would protect them? That gold, by its shine alone, could guard against time?" His voice, when it came, rolled through the halls like thunder through a canyon, deep and unrelenting, reverberating through each chamber and passage until the very air seemed to bend around it. "I do not come to steal," he said aloud, his breath sending sparks dancing across the heaps of treasure. "I come to become. This mountain will not remember your names, little kings, but it will remember mine." And with that, he sank his limbs into the heart of the horde, curling his great body around the Arkenstone's pedestal like a serpent coiled around the center of the world. Gold clung to his scales like a second skin, and gems caught in the ridges of his armor glittered like stars trapped in the hide of night. He did not lie still, but he did not move. He simply breathed, and in each breath the fire dimmed a little, until only its memory remained. In Dale, the sky glowed with unnatural color, and the people fled with what little they could carry. Mothers clutching children, smiths carrying heirloom blades, old men stumbling beneath the weight of scrolls they could not bear to leave. There was no time for resistance, no time for reason. The mountain had become a furnace, and the valley its chimney. And yet, amid the fleeing crowd, a single voice rose. A young boy, his hand in his father's, looking back at the mountain with tears burning on his cheeks. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did the dragon come?" His father did not answer at once. He looked back too, and in his face was a weariness born not from fear, but from recognition. "Because," he said at last, "we built a song so bright it drew fire, and the fire remembered what it had lost." And so the mountain changed hands, not by treaty, not by sword, but by the nature of the world itself. Where pride burns too hot, it calls flame. Where wealth gathers too deep, it sinks beneath its own shadow. And the dragon named Smaug slept at last, not in peace, but in possession, his breath rising like smoke from a forge that would never cool, and the gold beneath him pulsing with the weight of all that had been forgotten. Time, when buried beneath stone and sealed by fire, does not pass as it does for men, or even for elves. Within the belly of the mountain, it settles like dust, imperceptibly, invisibly, until years are smothered beneath gold, and decades vanish between one breath and the next. In the hollows of Erebor, where silence had once meant reverence and now signified dominion, Smaug slept. But his sleep was not the sleep of beasts, nor of the innocent. It was the slumber of thought, of slow digestion, not of food, for he needed none, but of memory. As the fire within him cooled to a simmering glow, and the hoard became not merely a bed, but an extension of his flesh, his dreams stretched longer, their edges less defined, and within them he saw not the world as it was, but as it remembered itself. He dreamt of the first flames, the ones that flickered in the darkness before the stars, when fire was a secret thing and had not yet learned to hunger. He dreamt of Glaurung, who spoke lies like poets and poisoned the world with knowing. He dreamt of Ancalagon, whose wings darkened the sky as if they had come to carry away the sun. And within those dreams he felt a strange kinship, not in friendship or fondness, for dragons do not love as mortals do, but in legacy, in the shared taste of wrath buried deep within the marrow. Yet even in his dreams, something tugged at the edge of his contentment, a question subtle and sharp like a thorn hidden beneath a blossom. What now? For though he possessed the treasure, though he lay enthroned upon a wealth that surpassed kings and kingdoms, Smaug was no fool. He understood in the slow-burning reaches of his mind that the mountain, for all its silence, was not an end. It was a moment, a pause, a breath between fates. and he, like all things that burn too brightly, could not last forever. But how, he wondered, does one like him meet eternity? One evening, though the concept of evening held no meaning in the lightless vastness of his lair, he stirred. The gold beneath him clinked and shifted, cascading like a slow avalanche around his limbs, sending sparks through the stillness. His eyes opened, twin furnaces, not yet roaring but watchful. He raised his head, not out of threat but thought, and gazed upward toward the unseen ceiling, where roots of the mountain twisted like the bones of the world. And he spoke, not loudly, not with grandeur, but with the kind of voice that shapes the air itself. "This place," he murmured, "was not made for me. It was made to hold dreams of others, of dwarves, of kings, of lineages carved into unyielding stone. And yet here I lie, not as a trespasser, but as a truth." His voice echoed, and for a moment he was silent again, watching as the echoes faded into corners too dark for flame to reach. "They called me a thief," he continued, "a bringer of ruin, a monster. But is it truly theft to take what was made to be hoarded? They sang to their gold like lovers. They shaped it into thrones, into weapons, into tokens of lineage and loss. They placed their identities into the metal, and I merely answered the call." The air around him trembled, not with magic, but with meaning. In the mountain's heart, every word he spoke lingered, woven into the very warmth of the stone, as if the walls themselves listened, not as judge, but as witness. "I am not fire given form," he said. "I am longing, unchained. I am the reflection they refuse to see. For all their craft, they forgot that treasure, once it gathers too deeply, ceases to serve. It begins to speak. It begins to want." And there he paused, as if tasting his own words. Above, on the outer slopes of the mountain, seasons came and went with the casual cruelty of time. The remains of Dale, now little more than ivy-wrapped stone and collapsed timber, stood as a scar on the land, a memory not erased but abandoned. And yet life returned, as it always did, in cautious roots and weary wings. It was during one such spring, though few dared call it by that name, that a figure stood upon a hillock some leagues from the gate of Erebor. A man no longer young, but not yet bowed by age, his cloak heavy with the dust of travel, and his eyes fixed not on the ruined city, but on the mountain beyond. Beside him stood a boy, tall for his age, with a bow across his back and a question on his tongue. "Father," the boy said quietly, "what lies within the mountain now?" The man was long in replying. His eyes, dark and thoughtful, were shaded not by fear, but by the kind of sorrow that only survivors carry, the sorrow of remembering what others forget. "A dragon," he said at last, "and more than a dragon, a shadow of our own making, a story that refused to end." The boy frowned. "But why does he not leave? If he has the treasure, what does he wait for?" The man looked to him, and the wind moved through the long grasses like the breath of time itself, rustling the stalks as if they too awaited an answer. "He waits," the man said, "because what he holds is not enough. Gold can be possessed, but meaning must be made. And he does not yet know how." And somewhere deep in the bones of Erebor, Smaug stirred once more, his tail curling tighter around the Arkenstone, which still glowed with a light not of gold, but of memory. And in that moment, though no voice rose and no horn sounded, he felt it again, that faint, unrelenting thorn in the heart of his purpose. What now? The fire within him did not answer, but it listened. Years passed as quietly and as inevitably as breath, and the world beyond the mountain wore its age without ceremony. Forests that had once stretched in mourning toward the smoldering horizon began to regrow in cautious silence, their roots winding through the bones of forgotten roads, their canopies rising like the hands of supplicants toward the sun that dared once again to shine over the valley of ruin. The river running, once choked by ash and flame, flowed clear again, its song quieter, more hesitant, as though it had not yet decided whether it was safe to sing aloud. And in that time, Smaug remained. He did not roam the skies as other dragons of tale and terror. He did not lay waste to kingdoms beyond the mountains, nor did he stir from his hoard in pursuit of conquest. Instead, he slept. And in his sleep he turned inward, not into madness, for that is too simple a word for the fire that dreams, but into reflection. The kind of reflection that only a creature who has devoured both light and lineage can endure. His hoard had grown strange, not in size, for there were no more kingdoms now to plunder, but in resonance. Coins that once glittered with the pride of Dwarven minting now dulled beneath his scales, their edges worn by the slow shifting of his weight. Gems that once burned like stars grew dim with disuse. Even the Arkenstone, that heart of all the mountain song, seemed quieter now, its brilliance less an illumination and more a pulse, a distant heartbeat, steady but unchanging. And still he did not move. But he thought, and the thoughts of a dragon are not like those of men, fleeting and tethered to time. They are long and coiled and deep, winding through centuries with the patience of glaciers and the sharpness of fire. In one such moment of wakeful stillness, his voice rose again, not in rage, but in the careful cadence of inquiry. "Is this what it is?" he said softly. "To possess everything, and yet be possessed by it in turn." His breath warmed the chamber, stirring dust motes into slow spirals that caught the gleam of scattered treasure like fireflies imprisoned in a jar. He looked not at the gold, but at the walls, at the carvings that still lingered there, half-melted images of kings and kinships, of battles etched in stone so that they might never be forgotten. But time, aided by fire, had blurred their faces, softened the sharp lines into ghostly impressions. "There was meaning in this," Smaug continued, speaking more to the dark than to himself. "Not in the gold, nor the gems, nor even the throne, but in the making, in the act of shaping one's will into the world. They forged not for gain alone, but to remember, to create something beyond the self. And I—" He trailed off, not because the thought faltered, but because it struck too close to that thorn which still nestled in the hidden place between his mind and his heart. "What have I shaped?" he asked at last. And the silence that followed was not empty, but expectant. Outside, the mountain loomed against a sky painted in dusk tones, streaked with the violet breath of twilight. The wind moved slowly along its flanks, weaving through gorges and ravines with the weary grace of a ghost retracing its old paths. Trees grew in patches along the lower slopes, their trunks bent by old fire, but still living, their leaves fluttering like reluctant hope. Birds had returned, though they kept to the edges, singing in uncertain voices, wary of echoes that still trembled beneath the stone. At the edge of this landscape, far from the scorched gate and the lingering fear, another fire stirred, though smaller, more fragile. A camp, a company. 12 dwarves and one who was not. A wizard's scheme, a hobbit's confusion, and the quiet pulse of fate beginning again to tighten its threads. Balin, oldest among them, sat apart from the others beside a low flame, its flicker catching the white of his beard and casting his face in hues of memory. Across from him sat Thorin Oakenshield, king in exile. Son of Thrain, son of Thror, his eyes were turned toward the mountain, his jaw set in that familiar way that spoke not only of will, but of burden. "He's still there," Thorin said after a long silence, his voice low and laced with something between reverence and hatred. "Sleeping like some god of the underworld, coiled around the dreams of my fathers." Balin nodded, but his reply was slow to come, for he did not speak as one who wished to persuade, but as one who feared he would not be heard. "And if he is," Balin said softly, "what then? You speak as though waking him would be a triumph. But some fires, lad, some fires, when stirred, do not burn only the enemy. They burn the land, the sky, and the soul of those who summon them." Thorin looked to him then, and there was pain in his gaze, old and sharp, like a blade buried too long. "Do you not feel it? The call of it? I was born to reclaim it, Balin, to restore what was taken. Not merely the gold, but the name." Durin's folk were broken beneath that beast, shattered not by claw, but by the loss of memory. I would give us back to ourselves. Balin's voice was quieter still, but steady. "Aye, and that is a noble dream. But there is danger, too, in chasing memory too far. For not all that was lost can be retrieved, and not all that sleeps wishes to remain forgotten. Ask yourself, Thorin, when you stand in that hall again, will you see your throne or your shadow?" The wind sighed through the trees then, stirring the smoke from the fire, and neither dwarf spoke for a long while after. And in the depths of Erebor, where Smaug lay half-wrapped in silence, the Arkenstone pulsed once, softly, like a distant bell, and the dragon's eyes opened. He had felt it, a shift, a ripple in the stillness. Not a threat, not yet, but a memory approaching, dressed in flesh and name and stubbornness. And Smaug, who had so long been content with the possession of the past, felt something he had not felt in an age. A flicker, not of fear, but of interest. The sky above the lonely mountain wore its twilight like a worn cloak, heavy with thought, edged in gold and shadow, and laced with the breath of coming frost. The stars, still hidden behind the veil of gathering dusk, trembled in their sleep, as if aware that something ancient had stirred beneath the earth once more. The wind, ever the mountain's oldest companion, flowed down the ridges like a whispered warning, curling through the broken archways of Dale, threading through the blackened ribs of its ruins like fingers pressing against a forgotten harp. Stretches between the drawing of a bowstring and the release of an arrow, an aching, anticipatory quiet where every stone and shadow seemed to lean forward, listening for the breath that would come next. Inside the mountain, in chambers long cloaked in gold and grief, Smaug was waking. Not fully, no, not yet, but with a slow, deliberate awareness of a being who has never once in his long, searing life needed to hurry. His great head shifted slightly, dislodging a cascade of coins that rang like distant bells, and his tail flexed beneath the mounded treasure, sending jeweled goblets toppling over the edge of their piled altars. His eyes remained closed, but his mind unfurled like smoke rising from a long-forgotten breath. There was a scent on the air, new but ancient, familiar yet foreign, a scent that spoke not only of dwarves, but of bloodline, of purpose. He breathed it in like an old song returned to him on the wind, and with that breath the chamber changed. The fire in his belly kindled faintly, a coal glowing beneath ash, and with it came thought. Not instinct, not hunger, but intention. "They have returned," he murmured, his voice like thunder folded into velvet, deep and echoing, yet strangely quiet, as though he spoke not to the gold, nor the mountain, nor even himself, but to the idea of fate itself. Fools, heirs of ruin, bringers of memory into the lair of fire. And still he did not move. Above him, the corridors of Erebor lay in ruinous stillness, their grandeur scarred by heat and time. Pillars cracked and blackened, archways softened into surreal curves where flame had kissed them without mercy. Yet beauty remained, haunting and solemn. The carvings had not vanished. The runes, though charred, still lingered like voices half swallowed by the dark. A viewer with eyes not only for wealth, but for history, might have felt them speak of ancient lineages, of the forging of names, of sorrow buried beneath stone. It was into this place that Bilbo Baggins crept. He came not as a warrior, nor a thief in the truest sense, but as something far rarer, a quiet soul in search of understanding, though he did not yet know that this was his purpose. The hobbit moved slowly, cautiously, each step a careful negotiation between fear and fascination. The flickering light of the lamp he carried cast long shadows upon the walls, and they seemed to dance not merely with movement, but with intent, like old ghosts waking to watch this small, strange interloper. He reached the edge of the treasure hoard, and the sight of it took his breath in a long, reverent hush. It was not simply the gold, though there was more than his wildest imaginings could have conceived, but the sheer presence of it. The hoard did not glimmer, it loomed. It shimmered, not like sunlight, but like memory distilled into metal, a million whispered longings caught in a frozen tide. There was pain in it, joy, madness, and something else, too. Something watching. Bilbo took one more step. Smaug opened one eye. It was a subtle motion, but it changed everything. The fire behind that eye was not mere light, it was depth, intelligence, a spiral of thought too vast to fully comprehend. It fixed itself upon the hobbit, not with curiosity, but with the amused precision of a sculptor considering a flaw in an otherwise perfect form. "Well now," Smaug said, and the chamber seemed to draw in around the sound, as if every corner of the mountain wished to hear it. "A thief? And yet, no blade drawn, no song sung, no greed in your step, though you are surrounded by it." Bilbo did not run. He froze, And in that moment of stillness, countless thoughts coursed through him, of home, of gardens, of the warmth of his hearth, and the weight of unfamiliar courage. But above all, one idea shone clearer than the rest. He was seen. Not merely observed, but perceived, as if every inch of his soul lay open before that ancient, terrible gaze. "I did not come to steal," Bilbo said, and though his voice trembled, it did not break. "At least, not in the way you mean. I came because there are those who still believe this place belongs to them, that it can be reclaimed, that what was lost can be rebuilt." Smaug shifted, a ripple passing through his form like an earthquake sleeping beneath silk. He lifted his head, not quickly, but with the measured grace of a god rising from thought, and he regarded Bilbo with a smile that was not cruel but profound. "Rebuilt," he echoed. "Yes, that is the dream of mortals, is it not? To mend what is shattered, to gather the ashes of memory and shape them into something that denies time. But tell me, halfling, what does it mean to rebuild when the roots of ruin lie not in the stones, but in the hearts that carved them?" Bilbo swallowed, his throat dry as dust. "I don't know. I'm not sure anyone does. But we try because we must. Because not trying is worse than failing." A long silence followed. Smaug's breath warmed the air, stirring the dust. His gaze, unblinking, softened only slightly, but it did. And when he spoke again, it was not with thunder, but with something darker, something closer to weariness. "You speak like a gardener," he said at last. "One who tends the soil, knowing the frost will return. I wonder, do you think this mountain can bloom again?" Bilbo lowered his eyes, not in defeat, but in thought. "I think," he said slowly, "that even ash feeds the earth, if given time." And somewhere deep within the hoard, the Arkenstone glimmered just once, faintly, like the last heartbeat of a dying star. And the dragon, for the first time in centuries, did not laugh. The cavern beneath the lonely mountain had grown quiet once more, but not with the simple hush of sleep or the sullen silence of fear. It was a deeper quiet, layered, listening, thick with the weight of all that had been said and all that still lay unspoken. The golden air trembled faintly, stirred not by movement but by thought, by the slow tectonic shift of something vast beginning to question the shape of its own reflection. Smaug's gaze lingered on the small figure before him, a hobbit alone beneath the mountain ceiling, dwarfed not only by the hoard that gleamed around him like a second sun, but by the enormity of what he had dared to do. For though Bilbo carried no sword aloft, nor wore armor upon his chest, he had walked willingly into the heart of fire and faced a creature whose breath could remake the world. And in that act, quiet, humble, and without song, there was a kind of defiance more profound than any blade. "You are not like the others," Smaug said at last, and his voice was softer now, almost contemplative, like a distant storm remembering its thunder. "You come not seeking to conquer, nor to claim. You are a question, not a command. That is unsettling." Bilbo's fingers twitched, not from fear, but from restraint. There were so many things he might have said in that moment, excuses, reassurances, even pleas. But instead, he looked up, truly looked into the eyes of the dragon. And what he saw there was not the fire of madness, but the slow burn of memory. And in that flame, he saw a flicker of something terribly human: loneliness. "I did not mean to unsettle you," Bilbo replied, and his voice, though small, rang clearly through the hall like a plucked harp string. "But maybe you needed to be unsettled. Maybe we all do. We hold too tightly to the idea of what we were, to what we lost. And we forget that even loss is part of growing. That even ruin, left long enough in silence, can become soil." Smaug tilted his head slightly, and for the first time a deep breath stirred the coals of his heart. His great wings, folded so long they had become like ridges of the mountain itself, shifted ever so slightly, shedding dust and golden spirals from the high arches above. "You speak of growth," he murmured, "as though it is inevitable, as though time alone is a gardener and not a destroyer. You look at me and see something that might be changed, but I am not a tree. I do not grow. I devour. I do not bend. I burn. That is what I am. That is what was made of me." Bilbo took a step forward, his footfall muffled by the soft layers of coin and cloth and ancient velvet that cushions the mountain floor like the sediment of history. "Maybe that's what you were," he said gently. "But nothing stays only what it was. Not really. Not forever. Even mountains are shaped by wind. Even rivers forget their paths." The dragon closed his eyes, and for a moment it seemed as if the fire behind them dimmed, not from weakness, but from thought. Deep, spiraling, painful thought, coiling inward like smoke through the chambers of his soul. "Do you think," he said after a long silence, "that they will forgive me?" It was a question not asked of Bilbo alone, but of the stone, the fire, the horde, and all the ghosts who still lingered in the grooves of the throne room floor. It was a question asked of time itself. Bilbo didn't answer at once. He looked around at the ruin and the riches, at the fractured beauty of this graveyard of greed. And then he looked back into the dragon's weary gaze. "I don't know," he said softly. "Forgiveness isn't always something that's given. Sometimes it's something we learn to give to ourselves." Outside, dawn had begun to climb the edge of the sky. The stars faded slowly into the soft rose and silver of morning, and the air grew lighter with each heartbeat. A breeze moved gently across the broken gates of Erebor, carrying with it the scent of pine and thawing stone. Somewhere below, the company stirred, unaware that within the mountain's core, a different battle had been fought, and not with sword, but with soul. Smaug turned his gaze toward the upper vaults, as though he too could feel the morning press against the rock like a promise. The Arkenstone pulsed faintly beneath his forelimb, not brightly, but steadily, like the breath of something that refused to be extinguished. "I have burned many things," the dragon said at last, and his voice no longer trembled with rage or pride, but with something quieter, sadder. "But I never knew what it meant to warm." And with that, he settled back upon the gold. Not to guard, but to rest. Not to wait for vengeance, but to dream. Bilbo stepped back, his lantern still glowing faintly in his hand, and as he turned to leave, he felt not relief nor triumph, but something far more difficult to name. sorrow mixed with reverence, fear tempered by understanding. He had seen the dragon. But more than that, he had heard him. The tunnel closed behind him, and the mountain grew still once more. And though history would tell of the fire, of the fall, of the arrow and the black sky day when Smaug at last took flight, and flame once more kissed the world, those who truly understood would speak quietly, and only when the wind was right. Of the night the dragon asked a question. Of the night the fire for a moment flickered without rage. Of the moment the gold did not glint, but listened. And deep beneath stone and story, where silence holds the final word, the dragon slept, not as a tyrant upon a throne, but as a soul wrapped in memory, surrounded by the echo of dreams not yet born.